at least 9 million Americans thrown out of work by the pandemic didn't receive any unemployment benefits. U.S. Unemployment Rescue left at least 9 million without help. And then they say red tape, fraud prevention efforts, and overwhelmed agencies left many Americans without benefits. Now, think about the narrative that the media is pushing and the politicians are pushing. They're saying that the opposite is the problem. Oh my God, if anything, people got too much money. People got too much money. They got stimulus payments, and they got unemployment checks, and hey, that's why there's a worker shortage. It's not that the jobs don't pay a living wage and they should pay a living wage and then they'd get applications. That's exactly what it is. But it's, oh no, blame the workers, blame regular people because they got a couple checks and now they're just sitting at home because they're just lazy. Utter nonsense. So everybody talks about that side of the equation, right? Oh, some people got more money than they even needed and they're saving it. Some people say that. That's what the media says. That's what a lot of the politicians say. I haven't heard anybody bring up this fact. That actually, wait a second, maybe the help wasn't nearly enough. Maybe a one-time stimulus check wasn't nearly enough. Maybe the giant loopholes in the unemployment system are a bigger problem. 9 million people thrown out of work and didn't receive any unemployment benefits even though they desperately needed it. 30% of people a couple months into the pandemic couldn't make rent. This is a crisis. This is a crisis, and that's why the answer was UBI. You needed to pay everybody every month, recurring, either $1,000 or $2,000 a month. That's what you needed to do. And they didn't do it. So I just want you to think about how the media frames everything from the side of big business. Because they've done all these stories where they quote these corporate leaders, these executives. And the corporate leaders are bitching about how I can't get enough work. And so everybody's blaming regular Americans and regular workers. Well, guess what, man? As we've discussed on this show, there are countless examples of smaller businesses. There was an ice cream shop, I believe, in Pittsburgh. There was a chain of 5 restaurants or 5 different restaurants under the same umbrella in Charlotte and Charleston, I think. And they raised their wages to $15 an hour, came up with a new incentive structure with the payment where they could get even more tips on top of that as well. And in the case of the ice cream shop, they got so many applications they lost count. They had to stop counting. And in the case of the other one, they went from being well below capacity to basically filling up like that. And people applied and wanted the jobs. And so when you raised the wages, people wanted to get back to work. Also, by the way, as I've told you guys before, even in an instance where they didn't, let's say, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think when people want to reevaluate their lives and determine what would make them the most happy and what to do in the future, even if that takes a year, I think that's okay. I think it's okay. I think people needed that space and that time to be able to determine what to do. And I don't look at that as just this is a lazy person and they should be kicked back into the workforce to do a miserable job that they don't like. But that effectively was the implication of everybody in the media and all the politicians who were talking about this. Shut up, get them all back to work, pay them less than a living wage, and let's, not think about this anymore. That's insane. That's insane. And that's anti-worker, and that's against regular Americans' interests. So they should have paid him more. There should have been a UBI. Guys, we already went over this, but there's that study from Stockton, California on UBI. And that one, it was small too. It was people only got $500. And guess what? Only like 2% of the money that people got went to like vices. Things that you look at and go, I don't know about that, like gambling or lotto tickets or whatever. Most of the money went to the things that you'd expect it to go to if you're a responsible adult. It went towards, rent and food and the electric bill. And by the way, one story from that study is a guy was working a job that he hated, and getting that $500 a month gave him the wiggle room to be able to take a day off to go find a better job that he likes, and he got the job and he's happier now. These are all good things. It's good. This is bad. 9 million people slip through the cracks of our system because the system is ruthless against poor people and working people. It is. It is. All these things that we do to avoid red tape and fraud prevention and, all the ways we try to make it more difficult to give people more hoops to jump through. I think those are terrible. I think those are bad things. It should have just been a universal check. It should have been recurring. It should have been Social Security for all, and we'd be in a much better place now. But now we all know if they did that, let's say they did UBI, Social Security for all, the media would have turned around and done all the stories they did about lazy people and put them on steroids. You know, they would have been like, this is ridiculous. Now the unemployment rate went up 2% or whatever, and you got to take away these benefits that people are getting. So in other words, go back to threatening people with poverty if they don't work a job that they despise. That's what the media wants to do. That's as reactionary as it gets, man, and it's really gross.